We got an action shot of Sarge. Go figure. He's not fixing a car though this time.
Hi, I'm actually off work, so I'm fixing supper instead of fixing a car.
Well, I bet you know what. I hope you fix. I hope you fix supper better than you fix cars.
Some of the stuff that he's been having to fix lately.
Yeah, right.
There's some questionable stuff. There's some questionable stuff rolling down the line.
There's an electric car. He's all over it.
Yeah, they moved me to Texas. I'm actually looking out the window at the AT&T Stadium.
Oh, really?
So,
yeah. Got as many people in it now as it usually does on Sundays?
What's that?
There's probably as much cheering going on right now as there is on Sundays.
I have no idea. I don't care.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna give it 2 more minutes.
That's what she said.
Okay, that had to be Roger.
Are we surprised?
Nope, not at all. I'd be a little disappointed if it wasn't.
Fair. Mr. Pettigrew, thanks very much for jumping in. I know you probably just finished work. Same with you, Richard. Appreciate it. Christopher. For those folks that are in the midst of tire season, I pray for your lower back. Chris, yeah, I figured. Britt, I have students to do most of that. All right, slave labor.
All right. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, excellent. All right, we have 30 more seconds. Let's folks in. Thank you, Mr. Paul. I appreciate that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody coming in and joining us tonight on this primetime edition of Service Drive Live. It is it's a special show for us, and it's one that we take very seriously on Sundays. And we've talked about it a few times on Sunday mornings and such. But there was a Joshua. We were in a conversation. And sort of the genesis of this is Joshua Taylor, my co-host for this evening, threw out a stat that we found was staggering on Service Drive Live. And it was about technicians losing their lives, taking their own lives. And Joshua, had just heard of another technician doing that. And I immediately texted him. I said, we got to take care of this. We got to bring attention to this as much as we possibly can. As for all of you who have never been on a Service Drive Live show, we are very blunt. We are very real on this show. And we don't hold punches. Sometimes we swear. It's not because, we think it's fun. That's just the way car guys talk. And we are real car guys and gals on this show. But for those of you who know me, I am typically not a touchy-feely sort of guy. As a matter of fact, I might be the antithesis of that, right? It takes a lot. But this is something that has grown on me so much, having lived through a couple of issues similar to this, and to have it hit so close to home. It's time we really talk about mental health in the car business, specifically with technicians, because without them, the rest of us don't make money. And I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to how we treat them, to the attention we give them, and to their own well-being. Joshua has been the voice of the technician for quite some time now, and to me, when I have a question on leadership of technicians, and I've been leading technicians for a long time. When I have a question on leadership, he's the first person I talk to. Joshua, please, I know you presented a great slideshow for us, a great deck here, and I know you've got all those numbers in that head of yours anyways. Please take it away, Joshua.
I appreciate the welcome. Good evening, folks. Good afternoon for some of you. Good evening for some of you, depending on who arrived this evening.
Fine. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much all for coming out. And I appreciate you giving some time and most importantly, some attention to a very near and dear topic for me. The reason why I built Wrench Turners in the first place is mostly because I had a moment, an apostrophe of sorts from my grandfather passing. That I was being greedy, I was being ignorant and arrogant about what I think I could and couldn't do for the industry. So I took a long, hard look on what it is that I can and should be doing from the community that's provided me 20 years at the time in the automotive industry. Like, what does it provide me? Well, it's provided me with a lifestyle, a skill set, a career, and financial remuneration to provide for my family. What is the things that I can talk about through experience, through all kinds of things that I can learn through the process? Well, mental health is a challenge that I've personally gone through. I haven't got the tattoo yet, but I should have an apostrophe myself. My first 18 months in the trade was awesome because I had a very tight-knit group of apprentices around me, along with a shop foreman who cared very deeply for the five of us. And in that 18 months, somebody I held very near and dear at the age of 20, I found out Monday morning that he'd hung himself. Now, 20 years ago, that was a big deal, but it wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was going to be over a period of time. Fast forward to now, it's become a pillar of what I think about every day, because I regularly get information about the inner struggles of technicians through this journey, through the podcast, interviewing people across the world, vendors, mechanics, apprentices, leaders. It's a really hard industry to be in. It's a really hard industry to succeed at, but there's a lot of really great people in it that really want a lot of other people to succeed, and I'm one of them. So just as a precursor, I do have a touch of the tism, and I do have a dollop of high definition attention. So the slide deck is not really for you. The slide deck is really for me to try and stay on track and keep this ship moving succinctly. So I apologize for needing one in the first place, but I'll do everything I can to make sure that we do this nice and clean and smooth so that you guys get the most benefit and affect the most technicians in a positive way we probably can. Just a little disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I have been coaching technicians for the last almost 3 years. We've got the number a little over 200 that I've done what I need to do to try and help them succeed. You'll hear little bits and pieces as we go through this of what I've done, what I've talked about, what's helped, what's not, to a certain degree. Happy to talk about it at length at any time afterwards. We're going to talk a little bit about data. We're going to talk a little bit about industry stressors. Some you'll know, some you won't. Overcoming some of the stigma around mental health, what that looks like, what you can do with your teams tomorrow to help create some support. And then I'm going to do a magic trick.
I like magic tricks.
And I've done this in the best way I can from a attention standpoint. I do about 5 to 8 slides. So not really 5 to 8 slides, but I do about 5 to 8 slides, and then get you guys to ask any questions that you want to ask about what I've just said, or anything that you think you want to get answered. Happy to answer. So first things first, the scary data. 1 in 4 automotive workers reported difficulties managing their mental health. So they don't know what to do, let alone how they feel, so on and so forth. This came across in data. This comes across in reading, articling, and in my coaching practice. They don't know what to do, let alone what to feel or how to express it. That in itself is a major challenge right now. There's lots of conversations being had about it, but nobody knows necessarily what to do. Roughly 25% of automotive businesses have reported employees being unable to work due to mental health issues. It's estimated that more than 1 in 5 US adults live with mental illnesses. That's 60 million Americans. 1 in 5, 60 million living with mental health issues. How many of you as leaders, by a raise of the hand, have had folks call in for a stress day or a mental health day? Right? This is a significant.
You know what? I bet a lot of people on here haven't had too much of that because people are too embarrassed to say that.
So sick days, mental health days, it's become significantly more prevalent. Depending on what side of the fence you stand on, mental health days is good, mental health days is bad. Depends on who you talk to. Personally, I don't think mental health days are a good thing. It needs to be resolved in a slightly different manner. That comes to leadership. That's not a rabbit hole we're going to go down today, but it is a challenge that we as leaders need to face and overcome. Only 43% of workers reported that their employer offers health insurance covering mental health and substance abuse disorders. Note that most technicians I've seen in my practice didn't know where to look in their benefit package to see if they have mental health or substance abuse coverage. They'd had benefits. Many of them didn't have mental health coverage, but didn't know where to even look to see if you can actually have some kind of assistance for mental health help. How many mechanics are being managed in this room? So in the chat, which is nicely going, I see, if anybody leads mechanics right now, give me a total, put it in the chat, please and thank. I'd like to just get a feel for how many technicians are being managed right now. 7, 4. Got what's that? 70, 80, 90, 95. Okay.
There you go. You're over
100, 110. Okay. So we got about 110 being managed, probably more, but about 110 being managed in the room. $101 in 1,250. Let it sink in for a second. 1 in 1,250 mechanics, not people, mechanics. I've had personally knowledge of 13 this year to date, and it's November. 80 in 100,000. To note, in America, the average in 2023 was 30 of 100 in 100,000. That's population. Mechanics are 80, 2.5 times. So it gets a little bit more scary than that, because that's already scary enough, but it's a bit more scary than that. The easiest thing to do to calculate the two other really big bads part of that is attempts and ideation. All you gotta do is move the decimal. It's 1 and 125 have attempted. So that 125 that we've effectively counted in the chat, one of them's attempted, statistically speaking. 1 in 12 is thinking about it. So we have 12, sorry, we have out of 120 roughly in the chat, that means 10 are actively thinking about it. Probably daily. That's how scary it is right now in automotive as a technician. Industry stressors. We know that this job on the floor is physically demanding. Sore feet. Very common in my practice as a coach. Like my feet are sore all of the time. One of the challenges of stress, anxiety, and depression is that one of the first things to occur to the body under stress is muscle tension. And it doesn't care what part of the body becomes tense. Many people get tense feet when they're stressed. What happens when you get tense feet when you're stressed? You don't have proper mobility of your feet. You fall. You hurt yourself. You injure your ankles. You injure your feet. You don't hold on to things properly. You try and catch things improperly. Your feet are the basis foundation of this job, not your hands, your feet. So you don't have a good footing, you're not doing this job properly. Tension can happen anywhere, including the feet. So orthotics, something that I talk about infrequently, I don't talk about enough. The cycle. So you have stress causing sore feet causing stress. One of the things that my wife does in her practice, every single person gets assessed for orthotics. Every single person. If you have people who are constantly falling over, constantly hurting themselves because they fall over, constantly dropping things, one of the first things to assess is whether they have a new pair of boots that is proper and if they do or do not need orthotics. Supination and pronation of the foot can dramatically change how a person walks, which means their knees, their hips, their low back, their shoulders, how they carry things, their neck and headaches, all because of how their feet sit. Sore neck. We're almost as bad, if not worse, than electricians for sore necks. We're like this all day. Up in the car, we're like this all day. So, good, bad, otherwise, it's part of the job. However, your neck is the conduit for your nervous system. If your body doesn't know what's going on because it can't send the message through your spine, through the nervous system, into your brain, it doesn't know what to do. One of the challenges with all of the mental health, all of them, is an understanding or misunderstanding of what's going on in the body. Your nervous system is the communication device telling your brain what to do, what chemicals to release, how to relax, how to breathe, all those things. If somebody is constantly anxious because they're always like this, because their lungs, the transmission of what's going on with their lungs isn't going to their brain. I'm actually getting oxygen. I don't need to hyperventilate to get oxygen. So small things like, are they regularly having issues with their ears? Are they having constant dizziness? Do they get vertigo? Do they have subluxations? Do they get dizzy? Do they get migraines? Do they constantly go home with migraines or headaches because they're like this, because they're not taking care of their neck? Stress causing neck issues causing stress. Last one, this one's fairly new to me, but for those who were in any form of military of any kind will probably know this. Stenosing tenosynovitis, trigger finger. So just about every mechanic on the planet, every military person who's fired lots and lots of rounds will know exactly what this is. I didn't know this was even a thing until about a year ago. Every mechanic should think about when they hold their hand down, relaxed at the end of the day, and their hands beside them as they're standing. Look at the degrees of your hand. I put a little image in there to think about it. The way the hand's supposed to fall is 35 degrees between the thumb through the metatarsal into the finger. If it's tight, there's lots of issues in there. You could have the stenovitis. You could have sore muscles in your hand that are causing pain that's chronic all of the time. That's seeing professionals to help work that out. There might be other things at play. But if your hands are in pain all of the time, it causes stress. Your body doesn't necessarily know how to deal with that. And that's stuff that we deal with every day. I'm a year and a half off the bench and my hands hurt every day. Every day. We got to be careful of those things. So those are some of the industry stressors. Do we have any questions?
Yes, I got one, Josh.
Shoot.
In the numbers that you talked about, does that include veterans, or is there statistically a lot higher if they're veterans who served?
It does not quantify, unfortunately. There are veteran suicide data. There is mechanic suicide data. There is attempts. There is ideation, and there's both for both veterans and mechanics, but there is never any data correlating the two. Okay. So I'd love to be able to provide that to see if there's a major crossover. I can almost guarantee there is, knowing that much of my initial practice, many of them were veterans to some degree, even if it was for a short time, many of them were. So correlation probably, but I don't have data to speak on that.
Okay.
So Josh, what you were describing there is all pains in the body and caused by the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cyclical nature, right? Because they have, they're stressed, causes body pain causes more stress, and it's a circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aside from orthopedics, which I understand, I never really thought about, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other things that leaders can do to help their technicians in this area?
Making one, we're going to get to a little bit at the end, but we can talk about it now for express nature. Reviewing benefits. Just review the benefits. What is it they get as part of their benefits? Not necessarily better benefits. Dave, I see that better benefits can be a thing depending on the circumstances, but just knowing what they actually have is a big problem.
Sure.
In my practice, many didn't know what they had, let alone use them. That's a whole different story as using them. But
The
just
ignorance of their own benefits, really.
right, exactly.
Okay, that's solid information, and that's actionable that we can take it place.
Correct. So the other thing to remember too, again, to reiterate, just to make sure to drive it home, it's cyclical. So you could have someone who is chronically ill, stressed, and in pain. The pain is causing the stress, or conversely, it could be that the stress is causing pain.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that unless you're doing some fairly frequent one-to-ones, and we'll get into that. So
I would also, Marshall put in the chat that that his whole team stretches. They do a team stretch. Having seen Marshall, I want video proof.
I have no doubt that Richard does when he goes to jiu-jitsu, but Marshall, you're gonna have to prove that bad boy. But there's lots of little things that you can do, and I can go into detail on all the things that I can recommend and have been recommended to help with all of those things that you can do in the store, like Marshall's idea of having the entire team stretch.
Yeah, for sure.
It's lame, but it helps.
Yeah, and Dan Clemens, good point there. Gym memberships for physical therapy. That's something your leadership can advocate for. They might not be able to do it, but they can certainly advocate for it strongly. And I get it. So sorry, Josh, go ahead.
It's okay. So one of the challenges that comes in my practice on a regular basis is expectations. The challenges is that the pressure to perform is also cyclical. The business expects the technicians to perform, and the ones that do want to perform have put pressure on themselves to perform. Obviously, you're always going to have the bottom 10% who have no desire to work, have no desire to do any of those things. And no matter how much counseling, no matter how much coaching, no matter how much resources or tools or leadership that you give them, don't want to produce. And those are obviously the bottom 10% for a reason. But just about every other person wants to perform and puts pressure on themselves to perform. This pressure is, in fact, a stress. These are the conversations that need to be happening during your one-to-ones on a regular basis. Like, you have top performers because they're top performers, but you top perform for a long period of time without an ability to understand what it is you're doing, the stresses you're putting on your body leads to burnout. Self-awareness is key, right? Pressure to perform is also being self-aware of what you're actually putting your body through. We talked about this before, Joe. Are you taking care of yourself? You gotta make the bread to pay the bills, but at what point do you take care of yourself so that you can continue to pay the bills? Good idea down there, Sebastian.
Yeah.
Mats are helpful, big time.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the key things that comes up in this when I talk to service managers one-to-one on the pressure to perform is I am actually a really big advocate for flat rate. Marshall and I go at this on a regular basis. He is against it wholeheartedly. That's okay. I like being able to have those debates, but I'm a big advocate for it. So when somebody comes to me and say, hey, we need them to perform, I agree, wholeheartedly agree. But each individual has a limit. Each individual has a threshold where they require the push. But in order to know what that is, you need to be talking to them on a regular basis. Waiter's gonna wait. Customer's waiting. Again, you have 10% at the bottom who say it because they don't care. But you have the 10% at the top who really, really care and work themselves into an absolute tizzy. I can't tell you and count how many I see on a regular basis, how many apprentices that I had. I got a waiter. I got a waiter. Like you could almost see the veins in their head popping out. That is not the kind of mentality and culture you want to breed in a team. Absolutely not. You want them to have the right mentality to get the work done, but not at what sacrifice? That is not the kind of sacrifice you want. You're going to burn yourself out, stress yourself out, and that leads to all kinds of immediate failures. Because if they don't get the car out on time, at least to their mind, it's immediate negative, immediate negative, immediate negative. You pile on the negatives, self-imposed even too much. That's what leads down these holes on a regular basis.
Josh, I got another question.
Shoot, sir.
So are we factoring in these numbers as well? I mean, because we're talking about mental health, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We got obviously mental disorders. They're either not taking the right medication or they're abusing it, substance and alcohol abuse, etc. Are those factored into these equations? Because it seemed that would exacerbate all this.
It will. 100%. I did not and have not dealt with any substance abuse in my practice. As soon as there is any conversation about any kind of, or potentially any kind of substance abuse, it's an immediate referral to a professional. There is too many things that can go sideways with someone who is even potentially utilizing anything as a form of self-medication. It can go sideways way too fast. From my experience outside looking in, goes right to a professional. Even an inclination needs to go to professional because they need so much more than I can give them. And I think one of the things that many leaders don't necessarily do fast enough is recommend professional assistance. There is such a stigma behind going to professional help that they don't want to appear weak. And we're going to get into that in a little bit, but going to get and seeking professional help is not a detractor, especially when it comes to substance abuse, right? We get into those things. We're talking about family sacrifices, right? Whether it's substance abuse or missing family time. I can't tell you how many in the 200, every single one of them, I would almost say, said, I am not going to this. I am missing this. I am missing this. I am not going to swimming practice. I am not going to this. I'm not going to this. The amount of pressure that is now being put on men, especially, to step up, to go to family things, and then those that are choosing to make sure that the bills are paid, that becomes guilt. And that is becoming guilt. I've had probably 10 technicians who are wallowing in guilt because they are not going to any family functions because the way their dealership is run is 6 days a week, 10-hour days. That's the way it is. And if they don't work those six shifts, those 10-hour shifts, every single one of them, they can't afford to pay the bills. They can't. Unfortunately, there are some states that don't pay nearly as well as others, and they have to work those 60 hours in order to make ends meet.
Yep.
So family sacrifices, the amount of pressure that again, 96.4% of mechanics, even in 2024, are men. The amount of self-guilt, self-pressure, self-barriers and stressors that we're putting on ourselves is a really, really, really big problem.
Well, and to Russell's point, self-barriers, self-guilt, all of that leads to self-medication.
Right.
So,
and or a lack of coping skills.
Absolutely.
That is then becomes, what do I do? Like at the beginning, what do I do? I don't know what I should feel. I don't know what I should do. I don't know how to fix this. And fundamentally, we're mechanics. The first thing that we want to do is fix things. And we're in a position where we know something is broken, but we have no idea where, who, or what to do.
All right, Joshua, go ahead. And when we have some questions, Brent Osmond is talking. Oh, we have questions now. So yep. Brent Osmond was mentioning in the chat, it's a great comment, right?
Mm-hmm.
About leadership. And I'm going to say this. There's a lot of shit leaders out there that do exactly what Brent is talking about right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as an industry, we need to call those people out and they need to be better. I've been calling people out for being a shit leader for a long time. and they need to be better. But I will also say this, there's a lot of good ones out there too. And it has to start, right? The leader has to start that routine, that circle, if you will. That leader has to start that. And that leader needs to communicate to the technicians that it's okay to come and talk, have a conversation. It's okay to do that. They need to check in on them. They need to do those things. And when you have leaders that do that, when they establish that it's okay to have the conversation about something other than work, or the things that are bothering you about work, either or, then that same manager is going to give you the time you need, is as much as they possibly can. They're going to give you the time they need. Sorry, Josh, go ahead, man.
That's okay. That's functionally it, right? There are alternatives, there are options, and we'll discuss that in a minute. So just real quick, we're planning Service Drive Live in person mid-March in Chicago. Keep on the lookout for that. We are looking for sponsors for the event, so keep that in mind, please and thank you.
Yeah, we've got one sponsor lined up.
We already know one sponsor.
We got one sponsor lined up.
We do.
Watch yourself. Watch yourself.
We got two sponsors lined up.
Two sponsors. Same thing. I'm always looking for mechanics, leaders, vendors, and now sponsors for the show as well. Trying to spread the wealth around as much as I possibly can. I'd like to go to some events this year, much like this one, but go to some events, share the wealth, share the knowledge. So any of the leaders in the room that have mechanics or themselves that want to be on the show, please reach out to me.
Yeah, and
I put my information at the very top of the chat.
I can say that I've had several technicians work with Joshua at multiple stores, and they've always come away amazed at how well versed Joshua is, and they always enjoy. They came back, man, that was cool. You know, it's great.
So I really appreciate it. I appreciate every bit of help. So we've got a bit to go here. So I'm gonna run through some of these because I really want your questions. I really want your feedback. So some barriers. So we've started to talk a bit about this. The tough it out. There is a line in the sand. Every single mechanic that I've come across has to tough it out. But knowing when it's appropriate, and then being able to trust your baymate or your spouse or your friend or your leader with the request of assistance, that's the ticket. That's the really big ticket. Blanket statement on everything of tough it out doesn't work anymore. There is too much stuff that we go through as mechanics to just tough it out. Way too much. We are not designed to do it solo. We need to stop this. There is a piece of it that we need to continue, but as a blanket, everything, no, it's got to stop. Fear of rejection. Raise your hand if you've ever been fired, let go, laid off, or made irrelevant. Right? Everybody in the room, right?
Yep.
So one of the challenges that has come up in my practice is that there's lots of no. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of no. So as a leader, the interesting thing is saying no more often, in all likelihood, means that your business is going to run better. I found that the more often that you can say no, the more likely you are to focus on the things that matter the most.
Yeah, but then what do you say when they say why?
So here's the challenge with that, Russell, is when you're not taking account of the person that's in front of you, all meaning goes out the door. Doesn't matter whether it's a yes or a no. I use the phrase personalization at scale because one person might need questions phrased differently. And I use this as a way to pattern interrupt. Don't use the phrase of, have you had a good day? Or is now a good time to talk? Use the inverse. Have I got you at a bad time? Some technicians need that. It allows them to say no in a positive way. From a technician point of view, start using that to your managers, your leaders, your supervisors, your service managers, whoever. Start using inverse questions to them. Make sure it's okay for them to say no. You want them to say no. They want to feel good saying no. That way, when they say yes, it's for the right reasons. And secondly, the fear of what the answer is overwhelming. Too many. So much so that they won't even ask. They won't ask for raises. Instead, they're simply leaving. We've got a shortage right now, so to speak, self-imposed because, well, they're not asking. They're just leaving. They're going up the street. Oh, I don't like it here. I'm just going up the street. The amount of money that is spent on every side in this fear of rejection is absolutely asinine. And the amount of stress that it puts on individuals and leaders is just, it's overwhelming. And the last one that I see the most is the fear of incompetence. I'm afraid to look stupid. If I ask for help to understand something, they'll think I'm not smart, or worse, they're not going to pay me anymore or want to pay me less. It's a very real fear repeatedly come up in coaching on a frequent basis. But what it shows is a pure insecurity. They have no confidence in themselves. They have no confidence in their leader. They have no confidence in their baymates. It's pure insecurity. The best way I know how to combat that is through developing a drive to learn, both in the person and from a leader standpoint. How do we develop the drive to learn? Because if they're actively seeking ways to learn more, they realize there's so much more to learn that it's stupid to not ask questions. You can't know everything. You just can't know everything. And most of them immediately assume that they must know everything. One of the challenges then becomes how they learn: auditory, visual, and tactile. They may be reading service manuals over and over again and not understanding what's in front of them and asking for help from somebody who can actively read it to them, because all of a sudden, if you hear it, maybe they can learn. Sometimes we have to coach upward with our leadership too. Exactly, Marshall. Sometimes your leader doesn't necessarily know how to coach down. We have to teach them how to teach us, right? It gets them over this fear of incompetence. Like, at the end of the day, it's communication. So, and to that point, all the technicians that have been successful with me, all of them, save a very small margin, all of their challenges that they say is pay, warranty, labor times, this, that, the other, blah, 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 until the kingdom come. It's behavioral. It's behavioral. They're doing something or acting a certain type of way, and that is resulting in them not making money.
And if they don't do something different, it's going to be the same thing 30 days from now.
Exactly. A little tidbit: saying sorry without change is manipulation. And that goes both ways. That goes both ways. I'm sorry that I didn't do this.
True that.
Behavior. So the technicians that were successful with me, whether it's a small amount or a large amount, it's changing behaviors. It's identifying the bad behaviors that they need to get rid of. Questions?
Has anybody got anything? A lot of thoughts on leadership here, but we can get to those. So.
I have a question. Good evening, everybody. One of the things that I've picked up, especially with mental wellness, mental health, is people put pressure on them because of what it's certainly in my industry, and Josh would know this, are limiting beliefs or dysfunctional core beliefs. Mm-hmm. And I think that a good step for any leader is to really learn how to spot these dysfunctional beliefs. And the way really that I do it in my coaching practice is to ask what is called the check-in question. You know, how many times do you meet somebody at the beginning of the day and they'll say, oh, hello, how are you? And even if you're not well, you're likely to say, yeah, I'm fine, I'm okay, all's good, right? But then the check-in question is simply, what's on your mind today? Okay? And then they have a choice of whether to tell you what's on their mind or not. And if they don't want to tell you on your mind, then you don't breach what we call the coaching triangle. If you Google not the coaching triangle, the drama triangle, then they don't want to be helped. But this is something that needs to be nurtured. So ask the check-in question, what's on your mind, rather than is everything okay. I mean, I respect what you were saying, Joshua. It gives them the opportunity to say yes or even no, but I fully support the check-in question. Saying no doesn't have to be difficult. It's a process. Acknowledge the request, thank them for it, and then just give them a reason why you cannot fulfill that request, and looking at identifying dysfunctional beliefs.
Yeah.
Would you say there is an apt way to respond to that as well? Because one of the challenges I see on a regular basis is not knowing how to respond to that question. Many technicians are afraid of opening themselves up, especially to leadership, in such a way that they provide personal information to some degree, like Russell on a regular basis. Russell Wickham says, don't let them know your next move. There is an air of that, but at the same time, we want them to share something so we can start building trust, right? We want to start building trust. As leaders, we absolutely need to be building trust. So they trust our judgment. They trust our leadership, so that when we give them something to do that we want them to get done, they do the job, and they're not, I don't want to do it. We want them to trust the decision. Now, as a follow-up to that, how would you get them to respond specifically to that question? What is like the perfect answer? Obviously, it's going to have the variable on the person's feelings, but what would be an ideal answer to that?
Are you talking about specifically what Wilson just alluded to? Because in my opinion, okay, when I ask somebody how they're doing, most of you know my responses, okay? And it's not okay or fine, okay? When somebody says okay or fine, watch their eyes. They're not going to look at you. They're preoccupied with something else. Now, that's a time to try to engage them to see if they would open up more. But when they say okay or fine, trust me, watch their behavior. Something else is going on somewhere in their mind, because they're just a canned response of okay. That's a deflection.
Russell,
And
can I build on
Wilson's,
that? Oh,
Please.
Go ahead.
Russell, if I could build on that and on what Wilson said, one of the things that I think is really important is that, and I do it myself, someone would say, so what's on your mind? And I might just give a polite answer. So then I read this book, and it was called The Coaching Habit. And yes. Okay, so then Wilson, so then you know, right? Yeah. So you say, what's on your mind? And I do this with my young adults. One's 16, one's 19, they're men. So men aren't going to tell me right away. My teenagers won't, and some of the men I work with. So then I'll just stand there and I'll listen, and I'll say, oh, really? Sounds great. So what else is on your mind?
And what else?
Well
so
done.
Jane, you've obviously read and digested that book. I think it's one of the best books ever, and I would strongly recommend that every person in a leadership position, that's
time, right, Wilson?
Sorry?
Yes, and then the third time. So then I might say that a second time. But what do we know? We know that trust is created through consistency. Gosh, if there's anything you guys ever hear me say, wherever anything applies, it's consistency creates trust. So then the third time, oh yeah, so that sounds interesting too. But really tell me, what else is on your mind? Yeah. And every time you ask it, you go deeper and deeper. And by the third time, you might start to hear it.
You might.
And I thought that was just an extraordinary thing I learned, and that I use with my young adults, that I use with some of my male colleagues who, of course, they want me to admire them for being bold and brave. And I do. But I think it's very bold and brave to be vulnerable. It's my job to tell them they're allowed to by asking multiple times and listening.
You're giving them permission to be vulnerable.
If I can just jump in again, if you are walking around and you see a technician who may be struggling, would it not be better to say, come walk with me? Let's just take a quick walk to remove them from the environment in which they're feeling stressed, because maybe they don't want to be vulnerable in that position because they don't want other people to see their reactions. And going back to what Russell was saying about looking at the two things with the eyes, right? There are two things that you can look for. The blink rate. The blink rate is how often a person blinks over a minute. So you take an estimate of how many times they blink in 15 seconds. The normal blink rate for a relaxed person is 15 times per second. Sorry, 15 times per minute. If it increases, something is likely to be wrong. So you've got blink rate and the shutter speed. The shutter speed of the eyes is how quickly the eyelids close and open. These are two things in behavior analytics that you can look for as potential signs for stress, as well as breathing. There's so many of these things that you can look for. Thank you.
Agreed.
If we recognize that and we find a way in, at least my experience with when people get hurt, they're not as quick to be vulnerable again. Some of them won't be. In a relationship, it went south for whatever reason. They don't want to be vulnerable again, and that sets up the stressors that Joshua you've actually been talking about. It makes it worse. So I'm gonna go back to with what Wilson and Jeannie were talking about. We have to find a way in, and that's usually with trust. If they've been burned at a job or with a relationship or whatever the case may be, the quickest way I found to do that is everybody wants the same thing in here. They want to know they matter, they count, that they make a difference, and they're part of something unto themselves. That's, I found, the quickest way to get in. If somebody can't be vulnerable, maybe that's not the right time. I don't push. Maybe other people have ways of doing that. But if we push too hard, all they do is reject. And I want to, because you're talking about behavior. And, you can look at what somebody's done the last 30 days, and there's only a few indicators that are going to, that would deviate from what the next 30 days is going to look like, or it's going to be the same thing. You're going to be dealing with the same issues over and over and over again, unless we find a way in and find out what they want and show them how to get that. And that's by changing their behavior.
I don't think you can, and then we'll let Joshua get back to his presentation here, but I don't think you can even start to approach someone to get authentic answers unless you've opened up a doorway for a relationship with them or established that relationship.
Right on, Joe. Right on.
All right, go ahead.
To everyone's point, and very eloquently, Jerry Davis down in the corner, as a leader, I have found sharing my struggles in life with my team has been instrumental in our growth. Relevance, relatability, empathy. They now have empathy for you. Now, obviously, you're not going to share your entire life story to the nth degree to build trust, but that understanding that you go through struggles too means that you are now a real person. You are not a king or queen in the tower commanding what is to be done. You are, as part of the ship, rowing along, being part of the team, trying to help everybody win, trying to get the ship to the same place. Overcoming some barriers. So we've talked about this a bit, but to go into detail, this is the most profound thing beyond journaling that I have found for technicians. Your shop walk, your walk the drain, whatever you call it, is probably the most powerful thing that you can do as a leader in a shop, whether you're a shop foreman or a service manager. I also suggest that you are transparent about your successes and your failures weekly. One of the challenges that leaders on a regular basis face is not being transparent about the losses. Again, we're going to let's be a real human being in front of our team. If you don't ever fail or show that you fail and that you are held accountable to yourself for those failures, they are not going to trust you. They will not trust you. You can win every award known to God and man, and if you don't show that you fail, they will still never trust you. I have seen this time and time and time again. I, as a leader, if I don't show that I fail, they won't trust me. especially those who have a struggle trusting you over time. So one of the keys, and this is right from coaching, if your team isn't following, especially if you're a shop foreman, perhaps they haven't been provided, perhaps the shop foreman hasn't provided the team with a reason to follow them. This is a really big deal in just about every store I've ever had the lucky behavior of being able to analyze in any capacity. Any shop that has a shop foreman that doesn't have any real influence over the entire team, not just a few, but the entire team, probably hasn't given the team enough reasons to follow them. Your reviewing your benefits. We talked a bit about this already. Just review it with them. If there's opportunities to double down on something, please do it. I know that Zach Perkel's in here. I know I've had the blessed opportunity to see what it is that they do and how they pay their techs. It's a really, really awesome style pay plan to pay their techs. They have a great benefit plan and a great way to pay out the benefit plan. It's really awesome. So just review. You don't necessarily have to pay more. And that's one of the common concerns that I have with service managers. Oh, you want me to pay more? No, be creative. There are other ways to make use of better benefits as long as you're creative. Open support. Your shop walks, your one-to-ones, your transparency, showing that you fail. Open support and leadership means being approachable, transparent, consistent, and consistently investing in the team's success. It involves empowering the team, addressing their individual needs, providing constructive feedback. One of the challenges I get, again, through coaching is being able as a leader to provide constructive feedback. Holding somebody accountable isn't telling them that they failed. Holding somebody accountable is showing them all of the things that have led up to this point, walking them through the challenges, and helping them determine what the best course of action so it never happens again. That's constructive feedback. That's accountability. Simply holding somebody to their failure is not accountability. That's just awful. It's just awful. So this is a common problem that I see, especially with new shop leaders, especially. Just saying, you screwed up, not holding them accountable. That's not holding them accountable. Last, building trust. I love this phrase. Trust is not built by giving help, but it's built by asking for help. You don't build trust by giving help. You get it by asking for help. Up or down. Ask for help. I need some help doing this. Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? Help. If you get the team wanting to help you, you show them that you're willing to be open, that I am unable to do something or I need help doing this. Again, open, vulnerable, talking about sharing stories, sharing our abilities, sharing our things that we're not able to do, showing them that we care enough to ask them for help, that they're capable of helping them. To Gene's point, 96.4 of them want to be of value. They want to be helped. They want to know that they are needed everywhere. One of the biggest concerns through coaching on a regular basis, I don't think I'm needed. They could probably do without me. One of the biggest issues that leads to me going, you need to seek professional help, is I don't think they need me. They absolutely do need you. The fact that you don't feel that has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you and your insecurities. You need to seek professional help. I can't help you. That is not something I can help with. And as a leader, understanding and realizing and acknowledging those things that they need help like that is also being part of a leader and helping them out of those mental health challenges. Any questions?
Wilson, go ahead.
Yeah, this whole thing about getting people to get professional help, they can quite easily put barriers up, I think, because they're embarrassed, they don't want to be judged, they don't want to be seen as failures or losers. And what I've found personally in my job is when I can't handle a situation with a client because I am not a counselor, okay, I'm not a therapist, is to get them to admit or recognize that they have a particular problem, and then ask them, well, how do you think you can overcome that problem? Do you think that you can overcome it by yourself, or do you think you might need a different kind of help? That's the route to go down, in my opinion. I've been down it twice with clients, and it works. As soon as they say, yes, I need help, then they are ready to receive that help. And you can still serve them value by helping them to find that source of help. And in America, there's an agency or a resource called betterhelp.com. I've used it myself on 2 occasions, and I'm not embarrassed to admit it openly that I needed help just to get things sorted out in my head. So I think leading them to the right resource is better than just saying, well, go get it yourself or whatever. Thank you.
Agreed. And Russell Hill, would you agree that folks that are going through mental challenges, much like addictions, acknowledging that you need help yourself is possibly one of the best ways to start the process?
It's the first step, is to take ownership and that you have a problem, and you can't do it alone. I mean, that's the difference between independence and interdependence, and the evolution of us. And as we get older and hopefully gain wisdom, that you and I can do so much more together than we can by ourselves. And the first step is asking for help. That's what I did.
Awesome.
Because, yeah.
I appreciate that. So I only have a little bit more.
Josh,
Yes, sir.
jump in 1 second.
Yeah, please, Peter, go ahead.
One of the things, the core values of everything that has been discussed tonight so far is communication.
Mm-hmm.
If we do not communicate with each other, both upwards and downwards down the chain, we will never solve the issues at hand. We will continuously increase the stress loads on every one of the issues, and that is the main concern here. Because once the stress load gets to be the point of breakage, there's no going back, because it will just break, and that's where the challenge really gets unattainably, how would you say, it can't be solved. And if you look at, and I'm not one to hold back here. I went through this for 10 years, and it was a struggle. And if you don't understand that there are people out there that are actually willing and wanting to help you, you will just compartmentalize yourself to the point where it becomes a black world. There are too many people, and I know a number of you on this call that have gone through these issues. And we have to really, as leaders, as stakeholders, as individuals, and mostly as humans, look to communicate better with our teams and our coworkers and our people in our circles and everywhere else, because you will never know who is actually in that challenge. I've known more people that have committed suicide that have been in what I thought the lives of their best lives, and in all fairness, they were suffering, and we can't tell. And the only way we could have told is if we communicated. So please keep that communication open, and that's where I'm going to land this plane tonight.
Peter?
The line's open.
Yes.
Peter, one of the things that I can say that sometimes it's really hard also to get that kind of support and to do that kind of communicating within your own place, because sometimes it just doesn't feel like the right place. Sometimes it feels as if those shares can even be triangulated and used against you. Or, I mean, those types of environments do exist where there's some unhealthy behaviors within certain organizations. And so I think that one of the things that I'll share that I even did, I think starting like 18 months ago, is when I was struggling with some things within my own organization, and I recognized it may not be the right place for me to work on it, I started to hear from other people, hey, why don't you hop on this forum? Hey, why don't you hop on that forum? And as a result of that, there was a little bit more safety in the distance of talking to those professionals who understood my daily, but actually weren't in my immediate space. And so I think that something like, the Sunday events and having a cup of coffee with a group of people, and we all kind of know what it's like to be in a dealership, but yet at the same time, we could do some shares and they could be nuanced, more private, but yet they could get to the bottom of some of those things. You could get it out, but you don't have it. It's not in your immediate space. So there's a little bit more safety there. There's Clubhouse, there's the forums that you do, Peter. Joe, you put on the Sunday mornings, like those things. There may not be enough people who know about them that they know that it was welcome. It was a welcome environment. Like I didn't really know. I'm a brand director, right? I didn't know that I could be so engaged in some of these things that have more, view fix-ups experts and gentlemen, but yet it's really the understanding of who you are and who I was and our interface that I needed to figure out. I couldn't figure it out in my own space, but it was so nice to hop on a Sunday morning, have a little bit of that anonymity, have a cup of coffee and do it. I don't want to talk too much, but if we don't share that there are ways to get outside of our immediate bubble, and that's really important too. So if each one of us can bring a lot more attention to all of the forums that a lot of you put together, so that and then say, hey, by the way, anybody can hop on this. I think, Joe, I had to say, hey, Joe, is this something I could do? And you're like, of course. I don't think everyone knows that.
Think of it this way, right? And this is where we talk about a lot of things. Starting is the hardest step, right? We have 60, just talking about this before we let everybody in the room today. There's 1,500 people that follow Service Drive Live on LinkedIn. 1,500. 160 people signed up or said I'm attending to this event tonight. There's been 40 people here. That in itself speaks volumes about the number of people that are in a position where they are either confident enough or feel safe enough or whatever the case may be, that they feel that they can come into a room which is actively about helping them out of that very headspace that they're in, that they feel like they can't or they won't, or maybe next time, right? And that's one of the challenges, because unfortunately there might not be a next time for some of those folks, right? There might not be a next time. And that's why we want to create some support, right? Some of you already do things like flex for appointments. Like many of you already do. Some of you do 410s. Like those that are doing the 410s as a working structure, that is so incredibly liberating to the average person, because now they have a full business day that they can go and take care of their family, take care of themselves, take care of the stuff that they don't necessarily want to ask you for the time off for, right? Just being able to go on a business day without actually having to ask for permission to do it. It's so liberating, so incredibly liberating. A couple of other things like programs. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Somebody brought up gyms. Locally, not so locally, and in the city around me, I know very specifically that FAF is an auto group here in Canada. I know very specifically when they built the new Volkswagen and the new Audi that's not that far from here, they built gyms in both dealerships. They built gyms, not like a machine, a gym to go in to use for every staff member to go into. Right now, obviously, that's not something that you can necessarily do at your store, but creating programs to help the teams. If your benefits packages, that maybe you're part of a group, and your benefits package doesn't include mental health. I do know that there is one dealership that started paying out of pocket for any therapy bills. Paid out of pocket. You go to therapy, you're going to get mental health to try and help be better, whatever the case may be. No questions asked. Give us the receipt. We'll pay for it. Those are things that you can do as a leader in a store. You are not necessarily just limited to what the benefit package is. There are alternatives. Boot programs, another one, same deal. We talked about boots earlier. $100 doesn't cover a $400 pair of boots that they have to replace every 6 months. And right now, boots, good boots that will last 6 months and not hurt your feet, that are proper for feet, are $400. Not to mention the orthotics, which are like $6. So a $100 boot program doesn't really cut it. And a lot of the times, again, this is pure feedback from coaching, they'd rather there not be a boot program because it feels like a slap in the face. And the ones that are going, how do I get a pair of boots for $100, are putting stuff on their feet that hurts them more than helps them. Family focus, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think I had one, maybe two, one for sure, but maybe two. Every other technician that came through coaching was either attached or married. One of the things that isn't talked about enough is making sure they know that it's okay to take time off to go to a family event. I want to go see my daughter at school. Go. It's so liberating. It's so incredibly liberating. I am so thankful that I get to do that myself. But when technicians that I've talked to that have a leader that go, what do you mean you want to go? I want to go see my daughter in the ballet or whatever the case is. They got the Christmas, the Christmas, whatever. Go. Like, tell me you're going. That is, you don't get to see those things again. That happens once, right? We have 18 years and we see as parents, we get 80% of what we see our children happens by the time they're 18. Those things don't happen again. There will always be more work. There will never be.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to. I don't want to be in my deathbed saying, "Man, I just wish I would have put in just a little bit more time into work."
Just a few more hours,
Just a few more hours. So I know that we talk about it. Unfortunately, there won't be anybody in this room, but there are leaders out there, and I won't call them leaders, who say, "No, you can't. We got work to do. We got customers waiting."
But they're not leaders. I can tell you that.
Those aren't leaders. And I know that there's nobody in this room there's absolutely nobody in this room that does that. But how the question is how do we influence mechanics and service advisors, the people who are going to become the leaders of our service departments? How do we influence them enough, educate them enough to make sure that when they are leaders, that they do say yes to those things? Empower them to find, what do you have to do? Like, what creative things do you have to do at work to make sure that that can happen? And lastly, morale. So I got a little bit. Morale is built on trust and consistency and authentic leadership. Morale is investing in your team's development and showing you value their work. Morale is creating an environment where people feel respected, heard, supported. Morale is recognizing achievements and addressing struggles, not with equal care, but a 1-to-4 ratio. I use the 80% rule. 80% rule.
Yeah, I
every criticism.
Out for a walk in just a couple minutes.
So all of those things, that is morale. That is not the coffee, the pizza, because nobody in this room thinks like that, but it needs to be said. We need to enforce that and impress upon the technicians that is what morale is. That is what culture is. And most importantly, show, don't tell. Mechanics are awful in terms of telling them what to do. They're really, really awful. Most of us are like 90% tactile learners, 10% visual learners. Most of us are. Just about everybody that came through my practice, the amount of audio learners is like at most 30%. When I did the training, and Dale can attend, and I'm not sure if Dale Pettigrew is still in the room, but when I did the training for Nissan Canada, there was one person in a room of 10 technicians, all senior technicians. One had more than 30% audio learner. One. So if you are telling somebody what to do, and I'm using that in the be as positive as you possibly can about that phrase, giving them instructions, the likelihood that they're going to get it right is 1 in 10. Show, don't tell. And lastly here, your team's not stuck. More than likely, it's their mindset. More than anything.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything, their mindset sucks. So we covered a bit of scary data, a little bit of industry stressors, identify maybe you didn't know, overcoming some stigmas, creating some support. We haven't done our magic trick. So one of these are bigger. It's a magic trick. One of these are bigger. I want all of you, I'm gonna get you to raise your hand in a second. All of you that think that the yellow one is bigger, raise your hand. Kate?
I don't see a yellow one. It's green.
Okay, color deficient dude. So assume maybe it's green.
Whatever.
Yellow or green. You think the yellow or green one is bigger, raise your hand. So Kate, we got a couple here. Who thinks the white one's bigger? Gene. I see Alfonso. I see Peter. I see Ryan. Awesome. That's really awesome. It's clear that everyone in this room can be manipulated by telling you something that's false.
Yeah, they look
They're
the same.
exactly the same size.
Mhm.
Repeating something that isn't true doesn't make it true. But if you repeat it enough times, you start to believe that it is. And it only takes once. It takes once. So when a mechanic is saying that I suck to himself once, that's all that it takes to start down the very dark journey. So I believe it is our job as leaders to impress upon our teams as much positive energy as you possibly can muster every single day. Because we go through, like I said at the very beginning, we go through too much shit every single day in every single position over and over again. We go through too much shit to do it on our own. So we need to be each other's positive beacon. Negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.
Thank you. That was great,
Thank
Joshua.
you, Joshua. Very much appreciated. Great.
Thank you so much.
This is stellar.
Thanks, Josh.
Stellar work. Anybody got any questions?
Just one final thing, if I may. If you ever get to the point where you get somebody to agree that they have a problem and that they should find help, you can put the icing on the cake simply by asking them a commitment style question. On a scale of 1, not willing, to 10, extremely willing, where would you be in order on that scale to go and get help? And just listen to what they award. And if they give it a high award, then you can just assist them. Well, how can I help you to make sure that that process is successful? And I think that that's a good way of nurturing people with problems.
Good stuff, Wilson.
Great job.
Josh, I have a question. I don't know if we have enough time for this answer. But
I'm here, brother.
What do you tell a manager that believes that mental health is intrinsic and that you as a manager really can't affect it that much? All we can do is make sure that there's enough staff, that the processes are in place, and we have the proper equipment. That's all we have control over as managers.
They're
Right?
not trying hard enough.
Okay.
Like I used the 80-20 rule for everything. I posted a couple of days. More than likely, it's effort, the amount of effort that's being put in. I would challenge anyone, player, leader alike. If you don't think that behavior, or more specifically mental health, can be affected and it's intrinsic, I challenge you every single day to give 4 pieces of positivity to every single person on your team every day for 30 days straight. You do that every single day for 30 days straight and see what happens to your team. You do that every single day. 4 pieces to every single team member every single day for 30 days. Look at your metrics before, look at metrics after, and it's the only thing you get to change across the month. You do that, and there is 0 change, there's your answer. But I can guarantee you that's not going to be the case. You can see it. You can see change in 7 days doing something like that.
Sure.
And I've seen it. I've seen it in 7 days because I use the counter method, right? I can see change in 7 days. Best changes is across 90. And absolutely, you're going to see some change in 30, but I can see changes across 7 days. And the counter method for behavior is flawless. I have yet to not make an effect on a technician using that, as long as it's behavior based, every single time.
Jerry Davis, please.
The only thing I would add, to that statement, that managers or leaders only have control over the crew and the equipment and this and that. If they're putting that much energy into finding a reason not to help somebody, then they need to put more energy into finding a new job, because they don't belong in this business anymore. This world that we're in, we need to take care of our people, and we can't let people stop us from doing that. And it all starts at the leadership level. Whether you got a boss above you or not, you can still take care of your people without having a giant checkbook to do it. It's all about caring, and it's all about conversation.
Right on, Jerry.
I think to that point is, unfortunately, and we've all come across those kinds of individuals, the ones that need to leave the most are the most likely to never leave, because they are oblivious to what they are doing.
Which is so weird and so true.
They are completely oblivious. And usually it's because they're incapable of looking in the mirror.
That's where it all starts, because everywhere you go,
never
there you
told them
are.
that they're screwing up either.
Well,
It's the unconscious incompetence that you, if you don't know that you don't know, you'll never know that you don't know. Simple as that.
I think it goes deeper than that, Peter. I think it goes deeper than that. They're not willing to look. They are aware that there are things that they can change, but they're not willing to look. They like things the way they are.
You can do whatever you want to. You can't help people like that until they're
Correct.
ready. You can encourage them. You can have empathy that you understand, but don't get into the sympathy thing, because you lose.
Wendy
That
had
makes
something in the comments here. Said, how would a person who knows they're off go about self-diagnosing whether they should talk to someone or whether they're just feeling sorry for themselves?
That's super hard and super easy all at the same time.
Right.
The easy answer is, and I'm very thankful that they're all here right now, as I have a group of boys that we literally talk all day, just about every day. And I've checked every one of them, and every one of them has checked me. I have built that over the last 3 years, and it is the most important thing to me. It's the most important thing to me, because not only is it a sharing of knowledge, a sharing of experience, sharing of life, it's a delegated accountability to other people willing to hold me accountable for my actions. And if I can delegate that, somebody else, now I don't want to completely put it on their shoulders, but now somebody is holding me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to listen to all of them say, you're fucking up. I'm willing to listen to that because I trust them. Unfortunately, and this is the biggest challenge, especially with mechanics that I've come across, I don't know what it's like for anybody else, but especially mechanics, many of them that have come through my coaching don't have a soul. Their biggest lift in their life was their dad, and their dad's gone. They no longer have a friend support group. They are 20 years out of high school or out of college. All the people that they used to talk to on a regular basis probably got married, maybe moved away, maybe they died, maybe they've gone in all of these things where they've just, all of a sudden, they're alone. The single most powerful thing that has ever happened to me is having my 10 mil boys. It's the single most important thing that's ever happened to me. And I don't know how I would get through anything now without them. Like I don't. Like, it's every time I have a question, goes to the group chat and we talk about it. We talk it through. It's that the same old adage of, like, it's the fire hall chat for firefighters. Like, they sit at the table, they have a meal, the fire hall says, this is what's the most likely, the most logical thing to do, and do it. It's what we do. And I don't know what it's like for women. I have no idea what that experience is like, and I have no idea if it's similar. But I would suggest more than anything, find people of like-minded nature who are willing to hold you accountable, that are willing for you to hold them accountable. That give and take, that's priceless.
Yeah. Lamont Harris, you're absolutely right with hashtag Win24. Anybody else have any questions at all?
Yeah, we need to do this again and dive a little deeper in how to affect that change and what they need to really do, not superficially. That's just my thought.
No, I think you're right. I think this time around we needed to bring awareness.
Yep.
And which I thank Joshua for doing. We needed to bring awareness, and next time I think there's some bigger ground to cover. There's some deeper ground to cover with maybe some real professionals. Everybody, thank you so much. Joshua, any final words?
I appreciate all of you. I appreciate your time, your energy. I seriously appreciate all of your time and energy. Make sure tomorrow, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter why it is, thank somebody for something, give somebody a hug for something, call somebody you haven't talked to in a while. Like, the simplest of things can completely change the course of somebody's life. Yeah. Completely change the course of somebody's life. And I shared that small story at the beginning. It's not so small story, but one of the 5 apprentices, one of the 5 of us chose not to go out with him that Sunday. He lives with that every single day of his life now. What would have happened if I had said yes to that drink?
For sure.
Now, obviously, drinking is not necessarily the go-to, but what would have happened had he gone out with him on Sunday night? So think about that. And it's not a guilt or anything else like that, but talk to people. We don't talk enough. Love all of you. Thank you very much.
Joshua, thank you. Joe, thank you.
Great
stuff.
Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember,
Amazing.
You're all leaders.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you Sunday.
You bet.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody.